welcome back to this week's episode of the MovieBabble Podcast. Here, it's me, Brennan. I'm joined with Nick. No call-in this week, but we'll manage. We got some great stuff to chat about. Obviously, we took a break for Easter last weekend. Hope everyone had a good week. But we're back, and we got some really good topics to cover. So firstly, Nick, welcome on. How was your Easter last weekend, and how have you been?
It's great. Movie theaters are back, Brennan. I'm really excited to talk about all things Kong. This wonderful, stupid movie that it is. It's good. How are you doing?
You know, I think it's a tale of two different coins there because, movie theaters for us, not quite back. We're struggling a little bit here in the late stages of COVID-19. The vaccine rollout's been slow. It's picking up, but it has been very slow. So it's a little bit of a different story, but I'm glad things are looking better in the US. And it seems like the way things are rolling out, you guys are having like your best period yet of the pandemic. And it's good to end strong, but we're certainly up here in Canada limping to that finish line after starting so good and after managing so well. But it is what
Yeah,
it
well,
is.
the U.S. is really finishing strong here. That's for sure. after 16 months.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. But we'll get into it here. So we're going to talk some Kong. We got some other good stuff as well. Firstly, let's just dive into those box office numbers because I think that's the most exciting thing of this movie. Weirdly, I think it's just looking at the numbers that it generated because we've been so deprived on Box Office Mojo. A site that I used to look at religiously, daily even. It lay dormant for me for months. So sad, but finally, we have some numbers that resemble normal life, right? So last weekend, Godzilla versus Kong made 32 million at the domestic box office, and that was just in the weekend, obviously. So it came out on the Wednesday. So in its 5-day Easter opening, it made $48 million, far surpassing predictions, which were between the 30 to 40 range for the 5-day opening. Honestly, this is fantastic. And I mean, following a week where it opened up to like 122 million overseas, and it's just continuing to triumph overseas. This movie's really on a roll. So yeah, last weekend, big numbers. What was your kind of take last weekend seeing those Easter numbers come out?
I was really, really surprised, honestly. I think it's a confluence of a few things. Like one, what was the last big movie that we had? Probably Wonder Woman and Soul on Christmas Day, right? Um, and even those, like, they were right to streaming. Like, I mean, so was Godzilla and Kong on HBO Max, but I feel like there was just a different vibe around that. And I feel like the weather is starting to get a little nicer here. People are excited. They're getting their vaccines. So they're really excited to go out to the theaters and see a movie like Godzilla and Kong, which is like, it demands that you see this on the biggest screen possible. If you're not seeing this on an IMAX screen, like, what are you doing? When I was watching this on HBO Max, I was a little sad because it's like, damn, last person in my family not to get a shot yet, and I just have to wait in my apartment until I can get my vaccines again, and then go out to theaters. But yeah, it was really amazing to me. I was really surprised.
Yeah, and just me kind of looking at it from an analytic standpoint, you're right. Looking back to those other movies, I think we had Wonder Woman come out Christmas Day on HBO Max, and then also theaters. Theaters were very limited, but it still turned out 16 million, I believe, over its first weekend, which is not too shabby. And I mean, you look at those numbers; they didn't release the day by day, but they said 16 million for the Wonder Woman first weekend. I was thinking, okay, so that suggests that it probably had at least one $5 million day in there. And I was looking at Kong and I said, if it makes 25 million over 5 days, I'll be happy because that means it'll make 5 million a day on average for 5 days, which theoretically would be five of the pandemic's best days. Instead, it doubles my estimates. And well, that was kind of my base level, but it really did double what I was thinking was going to happen here. And it really did turn out some big money. And it really is on par with Easter releases from years prior, right? Which is really impressive. Warner Bros. Had a little bit of an issue with the Canada rollout because I think in the US right now, 90% of theaters are going to be open to play this film, whereas in Canada, it's about 24%. So it's much less. I got to go see it at a drive-in. The audio wasn't the best, so I do want to try to check it out again. Hopefully, if things get better in the next month or so, I hear Warner Bros. Wants to keep this kind of as long as they can in theaters. So I'll probably try to get out to see it at some point when things get better. But it was still a fun time. Yeah, these numbers were insane. So we'll jump to this weekend now. So a weekend later, and it was expected to drop pretty steadily, and it made nearly $14 million this weekend, which we were looking at the numbers from the other MonsterVerse movies. That's not a bad drop at all.
Yeah, it really isn't. And so on, the total gross is already on par with King of the Monsters, which is nuts. That movie made 366 million worldwide, I believe, and this is already at 357 after 2 weeks. So first of all, that just shows you how much people did not like King of the Monsters. And also just, I think the general perception of this movie is that it's pretty good. People are excited about it. And I think they're just excited to be able to go out and see a movie again. So, yeah, 58% is not bad. The rest of them were right around that 55 range, something like that. So
Mhm.
it's really, really good for it.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was expecting a bigger drop just because I really felt like this would be a movie that everyone was going to see just to kind of capitalize on that kind of event last weekend, because it really did feel like it on social media. I know, like, I don't know if you noticed that, but on the Twitter feed, it just really felt like people were going, even not there, even Instagram, seeing people talking about it. My mom, she was even talking about it. Like people are, I felt like it felt like more of an event than um, what we've seen in a long time. We've been deprived of that, but no, people are still coming back to see it this weekend, which is pretty impressive. And that 58% drop is much better than King of the Monsters' 68% drop. It's better than 2014's Godzilla's 67% drop. So it's a very respectable drop for this movie. And I do expect it to pass 100 million in North America, which is just crazy. And it really does signal that people do want to get out to the theaters again. And this is the type of movie that it's one that you do have to see in theaters. I do want to talk quickly though about Warner Bros. HBO Max. They are looking like geniuses at this point. Obviously, 2022, they're not going to be doing the same sort of deal with day and date theaters plus HBO Max, but they are this year for every single release, and they look like geniuses. How do you have a movie on HBO Max, something with millions of users, and still make $48 million over 5 days at the box office? I'm a little baffled, but they do look really good right now.
It's really smart. Part of me wonders if that means HBO Max doesn't have a ton of subscribers, because people are still trying to go out to the theaters for it. But it's a great move. And also, like, all these movies are leaving the service after a month. So especially for this movie, if Warner Brothers plans to keep it in theaters for as long as possible, having it not on HBO Max anymore after that month window is open, I think could really prolong its life in theaters and even into like close to the summer months, which, like, it's really good business. I think there's a lot of different conversations about the creative side of this, where a lot of it seemed like a lot of the directors and people behind a lot of these movies just weren't aware that this was happening until Warner Brothers made the press release. So that's a little fucked up. And I think there's also talk about like stuff in contracts where, like, I wanted to have this in theaters, so they're kind of trying to work around that a little bit. But as a pure business move, I think it's really smart and one of the more flexible decisions we've seen throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's also good for the consumer. I mean, you have to obviously you got to respect some of these directors' wishes of wanting it in theaters, but I also have to think of the people who have been going through recession-like economy, right? And it's not easy. And maybe you don't want to go and spend $15 or 10 to $15 at the theaters, and you just want to watch it on HBO Max. So I think it's in that way, it's really nice on the consumer in a tough economic time right now. And just to have both options there is just it's smart. And I just really didn't see this coming. I mean, you're right. Maybe HBO Max doesn't have a ton of subscribers, but I would think they would have a few million. I don't know what they're at, but I would think at least a few million there. I mean, I know the buzz around Justice League was pretty big. I think that showed that they have some sort of base on HBO Max there. But yeah, I mean, all we can really say is they look like geniuses. And as you said, 30 days on HBO Max and theaters, and then after that, it leaves HBO Max. So I think that's the last day of April to leave. And really, you look at the box office and what's coming out. There's nothing coming out in May until like the last weekend. So you're right. This could really live long into May until we see at the end of the month Cruella come out, and then we see in June some more other movies come out. So yeah, this really does look like it's going to withstand, and it's pretty exciting to see as just someone who loves numbers.
You love those numbers. Yeah, I think that the next big movie is probably Mortal Kombat, right? That comes out sometime
Right.
this month,
Okay.
which is another Warner Brothers movie. So like they're kind of the big boys in the market right now, where they had just all of these movies banked and ready to go, pretty much with the maybe some post production to do, which you could do remotely and whatnot. But they just had all these movies kind of just waiting around, and I mean, none of us wanted this pandemic to last for as long as it has, but I think they've made a really good go of it just in terms of getting this out there and making all their platforms as flexible as possible. It's just,
Yeah.
I just think it's just a smart move by them.
Yeah. So Mortal Kombat on April 23. So I do agree that that's the next big one for sure. But it is very niche. I think it's a movie that will attract
Yeah.
them. Yeah. It's a little bit more niche. I think it's one that if it had good word of mouth, you'll probably see it balloon a little more. But you're right. That is certainly the next big one. I missed that
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat is something I have no attachment to, because I don't, I've never seen the original or its really bad sequel, which apparently bad. I haven't seen it, but and yeah, I just have no attachment to that. But it seems like people who do like those movies and like all of the stuff associated with Mortal Kombat are really excited. So I agree. I think it's not like a micro audience, because it's way too big for that, but it's very the people who like it are very, very excited for it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do expect it to definitely make some waves for sure. But besides that, I mean, you do have the Spiral movie, that Saw movie coming out in May,
Oh yeah.
which is another movie that is it's not a blockbuster, but it's another movie that's going to make some money. But really, I do think Godzilla versus Kong has 6 weeks to play, 7 weeks to play, really at the theaters before it gets any massive competition. Maybe it won't be first when these other movies come out, but it will still draw audiences. So it's pretty cool. And even me, someone who is waiting to finally get to see it in the theater, I'll probably go see it in June if it's still playing, July if it's still playing. So yeah, it's a pretty neat thing. And HBO and Warner Bros. They look really good right now, and it's a really smart pandemic play. And I'm excited to see how Cruella does and how Black Widow does, especially considering they have that Disney Plus release as well. I think they'll probably be heavier with their theater intake because they're the movies that cost $30 on Disney Plus, right? Like it's not like an HBO
Yeah.
Max straight to, right? It's $30. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those films, but I'm excited, and I think we can look forward to seeing a somewhat of a normal or just a little bit more of an exciting summer on Box Office Mojo. As someone who loves to check that out, I'll be back on religiously again every day.
Yeah, me too. I haven't. It's been a minute. We were before we got on here. It's like, wait, how do I work this site again? Because it's been it's been a really long time for me. But yeah, I think, and we've talked before how it's like the blockbusters are going to control movie theaters' futures. But especially now, while the pandemic is still going on, I think all of the bigger movies are really the only movies that have a good chance in theaters. Because this week we saw a movie called Voyagers from Lionsgate, which looked like a Lord of the Flies PG-13 young adult ripoff of Claire Denis' High Life from a few years ago. But that movie made like 1.3 million in 2,000 theaters this week. So that was kind of, it's one of those, it's like, it's not quite a blockbuster. It's definitely not a low budget movie. It's a space movie. They like a lot of production design in there. It's got some people in it. Colin Farrell is in it, Ty Sheridan, Lily Rose Depp. So it's kind of one of those tweeners that I think has been struggling in theaters for the past few years anyway. But I think movies like that just have no shot until there's like no signs of a pandemic around us.
I agree, 100% agree. I do agree there. And I did want to point out real quick, just before we move on to actually talking about the movie, just real quick. I think one good thing that Godzilla versus Kong can look at is how these other movies are doing. The marketplace is incredibly thin right now. There aren't too many options out there. So what does that do? That makes a movie like Nobody have just a 12% drop this weekend. The Unholy, a 23% drop. Raya and the Last Dragon had a boost of 5% this weekend from last weekend. People are going to see what's at the movies again. There isn't much, so people are going to see these movies that are out. So the drops are very low. We have this is very unusual to see drops like this, right? Like Tom and Jerry, 20%, Chaos Walking, 28%, movies are improving. The Croods improved 9% this weekend from last. So yeah, I mean, I think they should be optimistic on the next few weeks.
Movies are back. We're ready. Theaters are back. Put 1,000 more of them around the country. We're ready to go.
Exactly. But yeah, so let's get into the movie. So firstly, what was your take on Mechagodzilla?
It was fun. It was really, really fun. When they brought out like the bionic roar, that was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. Now this movie is unbelievably stupid, and I think considering how well it's done, I think that's kind of what everyone wanted from it. Like everyone just wanted to have Godzilla and Kong fight each other in broad daylight with there's no obstruction around them, no snow or darkness like there was in King of the Monsters with all those monster fights. They just want just beautiful fights, and this movie does that. The last 45 minutes of this movie are pure schlock, and it's lovely. Yeah, it's like the Fast and Furious of big monster movies. Like we are so far away from when like Godzilla was this big metaphor for nuclear destruction, and Kong is this big look at colonialism and racism. It's just we're not even thinking about that. We're just going to have these two things smash into each other and just destroy all of Hong Kong. I feel like it gave the end of Man of Steel a run for its money in the amount of destruction, because they completely level Hong Kong, which is hilarious to me.
That's hilarious that you bring that movie up, because I watched it this week for the first time since theaters, Man of Steel, like 8 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's funny. And I noticed that right away. I'm like, damn, they really took out this city, man. Every building's just dominoes. But you're right, they leveled Hong Kong. But I love that neon look of the city. That was really nice to see. Good little backdrop. Even because we really only had two major fight scenes with them, but both were kind of all out, right? There weren't too many teases. Like even the ocean sequence that is kind of being played in all the trailers, I think they gave us a lot there. For me, I was satisfied. I think the audio for me is what made it a little underwhelming, just because the roar sounded like it was busting my car speakers. But for the most part, I was pretty satisfied. And I think seeing it again at some point, just hopefully in a theater or in the basement or something, surround sound, I think it would be good.
Yeah, and it sounds like they really took a lot of the feedback from King of the Monsters to heart, because this movie was pushed back. I mean, before it got pushed back to now, it was pushed back 6 months because of just extensive reshoots. And you can tell because a lot of it, because there's two things that you can really tell that they had to like change or get rid of stuff, because Kyle Chandler, who is one of the main characters of the last movie, he has like two scenes in this movie where he talks to Millie Bobby Brown. And then there's another one with where Lance Reddick is in this movie, and he's in the opening credits, and it's like starring Lance Reddick, and it's right after like Demian Bashir, who's like the lead villain, and all these other people that have pretty big roles in this, and he has maybe one line of dialogue in the entire movie. So clearly there was a lot of stuff on like cutting room floor there, and it seemed like because what is the Godzilla Corporation? Is that Monarch?
Yeah,
is
Monarch,
that what they're called? So it seems like they cut out a lot of that stuff from whatever this cut of the movie is, and then just focused on like, because it's a lot of the movie is just Kong and an entirely CGI landscape just kind of fucking shit up. So I feel like that was maybe a good move to make to get away from the human element of it all.
You're right, and they were able to keep it under 2 hours, which is good for a film like this, right?
Yeah, because normally this kind of movie is like 215 plus. Like it seems like they just trimmed all of the fat out of this movie.
Yeah, and I mean I appreciate that. And the Monarch, yeah, you're right. It seemed like they had a lot of ideas, and they were missing something. So you're probably right. They cut it a lot there. The Millie Bobby Brown, Julian Dennison, and Brian Tyree Henry aspect of the film was that engaging for me. They go on their kind of like side quests throughout the movie to kind of like try to expose Monarch or whatever. And those are three charming people that are fun to watch on screen, but it wasn't really much. It was kind of the moments of the movie where I would be able to get some snacks out.
Yeah, it's the I immediately thought of the 2018 Halloween, where it starts with the podcasters, because Brian Tyree Henry's the like the crackpot podcaster trying to
Yeah.
like blow the lid off of this conspiracy. It's weird. We're in an age now. I guess we're at some point we're gonna be lampooned in a movie. So
Yeah.
I guess let's choose our words wisely.
Good stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not my favorite of the MonsterVerse. I think the 2014 Godzilla, I think there's a lot of good work there. While the movie doesn't, for me, like feel completely satisfying, I think it's nice to look at, and it's a good movie. I think it's executed pretty well, and even Skull Island, I think it's very fun to watch. I think it's one of the more fun blockbusters of recent memory. And King of the Monsters is really messy, but like I enjoyed it in IMAX. That's all I can really say. So I mean, this movie kind of lands for me somewhere in the middle of them all. Like it's one that I'm enjoying in the moment, and it's really cool to see everyone kind of rallying around this thing right now. But it's not anything super great, and I don't think anyone really expected it to be.
Yeah, I'm in the same mode as you. I feel like I haven't watched it in a while, so I'm interested to see how I feel about it when I revisit it. But the 2014 Godzilla has kind of risen in my estimation a little bit, which is kind of funny to think about when you compare that movie to this movie, where the 2014 Godzilla is very self-serious. That movie is like, we're gonna fight Godzilla with tanks and all of these, like they try to be very tactile and real with it, and then we're in this movie we're flying a gravity ship into the center of the earth.
Quick moving, very fast developing technology.
Yeah, they did a really good job in combating all of these crazy titans. I mean, I guess when they destroy entire cities in each of these movies, you kind of have to do that. But I'm in the same boat with you, where I really I need to watch more of them, but I really appreciate some of the older Japanese Godzilla movies. I think those are terrific, and especially like the first King Kong is it's great. It's one of the landmark movies ever made. Um, there's like a little there, kind of back to like these things actually stand for something. But like I was in the middle of a tough work week for me when this came out. It came out on a Wednesday. I got to see two things destroy everything. Two big monsters just beat each other, and then one of my favorite parts was when Kong like popped his shoulder back into
Oh,
place on the building.
that was good.
Like it's just dumb stuff like that. I'm here. I like to champion capital C cinema, but sometimes you just kind of need a palate cleanser like this.
Mhm.
I feel like this movie it knows exactly what it is, and Adam Wingard was a really smart director choice for this, because he works in a lot of genre filmmaking. I Love the Guest, for people who haven't seen that. But he knows how to deal with a genre, and he knows what makes it really cool, and he knows how to add little flourishes to it all. So this movie's it's nothing special, but it's you get exactly what it markets. So
Right.
that's some kind of win in my book.
Exactly. So that is Godzilla versus Kong. We're going to keep seeing it roar at the box office, maybe all the way to $500 million. Who knows? But certainly to at the very least 400 to 450. So very exciting stuff for movies. So we'll move on to some recent movies you watched. So what's something you've watched this week? Maybe a new release.
I unfortunately watched Thunder Force, which was the new movie that came to Netflix it's the latest collaboration between Melissa McCarthy and her husband, Ben Falcone. And it's really bad. I really wish I watched literally anything else, but I guess just a quick summary of it. It's a superhero movie. It's a comedy superhero movie. So stars Octavia Spencer and Melissa McCarthy. They're childhood friends. They've grown apart. They come back together again. Octavia Spencer is this big scientist who's trying to develop superhero powers, because the whole conceit of this movie is that there was some big cosmic ray event in the 80s which came down the earth, and it only made super villains. So it there was all these mutations that caused in people, but it only heightened people that were kind of genetically disposed to be sociopaths. So I thought that was kind of a fun idea at first, right? Because it's a world where only supervillains exist, which is kind of fun to me. But after that, it's just a lot of kind of lazy gags where Melissa McCarthy falls on herself a lot and kind of is a little obnoxious in scenes, and then that's kind of the movie. That's really it. Basically, Octavia Spencer is creating this serum. Miss Melissa McCarthy accidentally injects herself with it. She gains super strength. So then they're like, well, she's here now. She has superpowers. So let's you and I fight evil together. So it's Octavia Spencer, who's invisible. Melissa McCarthy has super strength, and they fight bad people. And Jason Bateman has crab hands. And
Nice.
that's the movie. They have an evil Bob Cannavale as the mayor, who's clearly a villain from the first time you see him, and he's a super villain. So it's kind of it.
He fits the bill.
When I watched the movie, it really felt like, when you watch, like, I'm thinking of like these really famous Blu-rays. Like if you watch Anchorman, they have all the special features on the Blu-ray where it's all these extended scenes of stuff that they cut from the movie. And some of them are kind of funny, but then there's some that were like very, very overly long improv scenes that don't really add much to the movie and aren't really that funny.
Yeah.
You know those kind of scenes I'm talking about? And
Yeah.
then you watch that and you're like, I'm glad they cut that from the movie, because that really doesn't work. And this movie feels like that's the entire movie, where it's scenes they should have cut because they just didn't work and they don't really do much to further the plot. But that's just what's the final product of the movie instead of a special feature. It's I wasted a lot of time.
It's trending pretty good on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's like number 1 this week.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I really like Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
I think she's a great actress. I think she's hilarious, but she just needs to stop working with her husband. I hope they have a lovely marriage. I really hope they do. But I can run down the movies that they've made together. So they made Tammy, The Boss, Life of the Party, Super Intelligence, and now Thunder Force. All those movies I'd say are pretty bad.
It's on her bottom half of her career.
Yeah.
The bottom.
Like she needs to start working with Paul Feig some more, or work with other people. I think Ben Falcone is fun when he shows up in movies. He's always fun as like a weird cameo where he gets to make a few jokes. I like him. There's just like the pairing doesn't work. It's just I don't know what to say. Like I hope they have a long, prosperous relationship together, but they need to go their separate ways creatively, because I think Melissa McCarthy is just, I think she's too funny, and I think she gets a bad rap because she's in a lot of these movies that her husband makes that aren't very good. I would like to see her in funnier stuff, because I think she's delightful, but I don't know. This movie just was not good at all.
Well, that is that.
Let's move on.
Thunder Force. I mean, it is trending. It's trending here too. I think it's like up there. But I mean, it makes sense, right? Melissa McCarthy, original Netflix movie. How could it not?
I feel like that's the move for Netflix. Whenever they get a movie with a star and it immediately trends. Like, I'm thinking there's another movie that just came out recently, Concrete Cowboy, which has Idris Elba in it, so that immediately goes into the top 10. And that's a different situation, because I actually like that movie. That movie's pretty good. But they find these movies where they can put a star in the middle, and they can put that on like the little icon on your home screen. And you'd be like, wow, Melissa McCarthy's in this movie. I guess I better watch it. And then it's not a very good movie.
Yeah, I got to watch Concrete Cowboy. I mean, it was at TIFF last year, and it was one of the ones I was maybe going to watch, but I didn't end up choosing it because I knew Netflix was going to put that out. But I got to see that soon. So the movie that I watched this week is one came out in fall of last year on Hulu. Hulu's not here, so it came out Netflix internationally last week. I think it's like number 5 on Canadian Netflix right now, really doing well, and that is Run, Anish Chaganty's new thriller starring Sarah Paulson. Really good. I mean, I enjoyed it. For me, it's not as good as Searching. He's obviously the director of Searching, so this is his second feature film now. It also stars Kira Allen, who does very well in this movie. And as you said, fun fact about her was she's the first lead kind of just solely wheelchair actress since the 1940s or something like that, you said?
Yeah, I can't remember what the movie is, but yeah, she's one of the first wheelchair bound actresses to lead a movie in that time period, which is really cool. It's just a really fun just change for representation in film, and she's great in the movie. I want to see her in more things. But yeah,
they put her through a lot of pretty extensive stuff in this film as well. I wouldn't have guessed that she is actually wheelchair bound, because she does go to some good lengths in this movie. And I mean, she's great. Like it's really cool to hear about that. That's really neat. This is a fun thriller, right? And I think obviously you saw it back in the fall or whatever. I didn't quite like it as much as Searching. That's a movie I absolutely loved when it first came out. Um, this movie, so it's fun, but I just feel like it's just kind of missing that. I think we talked about this before we got on, but you're kind of waiting for something to really take a turn in this movie, kind of late on, that kind of makes you go, wow. I mean, Searching had that element, but I am really excited for this director, right? He's only 30 years of age, and he's made two really good thrillers, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what he does from this point out. But yeah, so what do you remember from this film? Did you enjoy it back when you saw it?
I did. I felt similar to you, where it's really well crafted and you're really into it the entire time. But you're thinking, okay, I've seen this movie. This is like three, four, five movies that I know really well, kind of stitched together, and I'm waiting for it to become something more than that, which it never truly does. But it's still pretty thrilling the entire time, and Sarah Paulson's really going for it and
Yeah.
really good in the movie. um, but yeah, it's just this guy. I think he's going to go on and make an all timer. Which I know people. I'm not as crazy about Searching as some people are. I think it's really good, but I think some people were like over the moon for that movie. But I think at some point he's going to make like an all time movie. It's like you said, he's only 30, which is nuts. If you read his backstory, he's just had like he worked for Google
Yeah.
for the thing. He was in their creative department, made a lot of commercials for them. And then he's just like, no, I'm just going to go out and make movies. And now he's made two really successful movies that people really like. So it's kind of like him and Jordan Peele are kind of the two horror thriller guys right now who are off making their own projects. It's really cool. I think he's really talented, and he like there's the one scene where Keira Allen is crawling across the roof in this movie that I think is terrific.
That's the one,
Uh,
man. Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's just so much tension in that. He's a really good director of actors. He is like both all the performances in all of his movies, especially this one, are really good. It's not a movie. Run is also a movie that I'm not wild about, but it's just like there's so much good stuff in it where he's going to make something. Well, he'll make something that I really like at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with Searching, for me, I'm one of those people that was really super high on Searching. I think it like almost made my top 10 of 2018. Like it was really on the cusp there. So I really did dig it. And that's a movie that went on to make 75 million at the box office. It didn't even cost $1 million to make, right? And I mean, I think what you say about this movie, it feels like a lot of other movies put together and you're kind of waiting for it to come into its own. I do feel that as well. I think with Searching, the element of it being like solely on like a computer screen, I think that probably maybe blinds you from the fact that maybe this movie does follow tropes of other movies, but it does do that well. Um, yeah, I agree. I think this guy's going to go on to do some big things. But yeah, the movie itself, I mean, you got Sarah Paulson. She's kind of this, she's this obsessed. I wouldn't say obsessed. She's definitely got some issues there, but she's got her daughter there who, she's been tranking in her leg with some dog meds that have been kind of numbing her legs for her whole life, and she doesn't know it. And she's slowly starting to pick up on, maybe like there's something different about my mom. like what's going on with me here? And there was that one scene where she's in the pharmacy and she goes to talk to the pharmacist and she's like, what are these pills? What are these pills? And the pharmacist reveals that they're dog medicine, and that's kind of what, and then you kind of come to the realization that's what Sarah Paulson's been giving her daughter this whole time. Really good scene, that scene as well.
Yeah, there's so many scenes that are filled with really good tension in that. I mean, especially that scene because it's cross-cutting between Sarah Paulson at the movies and realizing that okay, maybe something else is up here instead of just going to the bathroom. And it's really good at ratcheting tension. But yeah, he just knows how to make a movie at this point. Really, I would love to see. I'm really fascinated to see what he does next. It's because there's just a few scenes where Sarah Paulson is just really going for it in this movie. She's just really good.
She's always really
Yeah,
swinging for the fences.
definitely. But it's I haven't seen a lot of her horror stuff, so maybe that's why it stood out to me. I don't really watch American Horror Story or anything like that, so I didn't watch the terrible looking Nurse Ratched origin story on Netflix. What was that called? Just Ratchet, right?
Yeah.
But I think he just moves that character so well throughout the movie, because that's another one, right, where we've seen the overprotective mother figure in horror movies for how many years, and I mean that reverberates even back to like Psycho and stuff like that. So he's this movie is pure Hitchcock, and a lot of that was with church searching as well. So he's got a lot of good tricks up his sleeve. I dig it.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And I did want to go before we go, very niche little statement here, but this director here, Anish Kaganti, is really setting up his own cinematic universe. About 8 minutes into this movie, Kiera Allen's character's just on the computer looking at things, and I see in the bottom left a picture of a redhead kind of stock image girl. And right away, I remember in searching that girl with the username Fish and Chips that's used to kind of lure the daughter there of John Chu, right? And that got me right there. So he used the same girl for both movies. He's making his own cinematic universe.
I love when directors do that. I mean, there's the obnoxious version of that too, where it's like, I can't think of it, but there's some really stupid Shyamalan thing where he's like, hey, remember this other great movie that I made? And it's not very good, but I can't remember what it is at the top of my head. But I really enjoy that when they have like little nods to the other stuff. It's just a fun little meta thing, like their own universe that they're creating inside their own heads over however many years. I think that stuff is neat.
Reminds me of Hubie Halloween. The cinematic universe.
I'm really looking forward to the next movie in the Hubie Halloween universe.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to when we start crossing between movies and TV shows, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Really looking forward. I think that's more of like a Phase 5 thing for Hubie, but really looking forward to it.
Oh God. So yeah, that's Run, and that is Thunder Force as well. So now we'll go on to this week's segment of the kind of our, I guess, what are we going to call it this week? What do you got, Nick?
Did we decide on Babble Movie Club ? I mean, if not, I can just come up with another name. Why not?
That's pretty good. We'll hold on to that this week.
Just all hail Mads, I guess, in this case.
Yeah, I mean, introduce us. What do we got this week? This was your pick.
Yeah, so this week I got everyone to watch The Hunt. Not the most talked about movie of 2020, but the Danish film from 2012 starring Mads Mikkelsen and a couple other people that we just saw in Thomas Vinterberg's Another Round. This movie is also directed by Thomas Vinterberg. And this is this is probably one of the more celebrated, like, contemporary international films, probably, right? It seems, I think the IMDb rating for this movie is 8 point something. It's off the charts. People really like it, but I chose it because I'm trying to make I'm really trying to like knock down and watch all of like the big time international films that I haven't gotten to in my life. So I'm trying to do that now, and this is on my list. I just watched In the Mood for Love for the first time as well, and that was lovely. But yeah, this movie is a tricky little one. It's about Mads Mikkelsen, who works in the kindergarten, and he has a really tender relationship with his really good buddy's daughter. It's really sweet. Walks her back from school when her parents are late and not picking her up, and didn't pick her up and stuff like that. And basically there's a big rumor starts around the town that he sexually abused this kid, and it's kind of, we go from there. And I don't really want to spoil stuff about it, but it's just this really gut-wrenching, tough movie about just hysteria and what the truth really means. And it's definitely not a comfortable movie to watch, but I think it's really terrific. So what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is, firstly, off the top, I mean, good relevant pick, right? Vinterberg just got nominated for Best Director. So, I mean, when else are we going to watch The Hunt, right?
That was another reason where I was like, I need to watch more Vinterberg movies, because Another Round is just such a banger. So I had to get around his other ones too.
Exactly. This movie I liked more than Another Round, and it's certainly one that makes you feel a lot more than that movie. I think a lot of this movie's really tough to watch. Um, you're almost cringing at times, or wincing even at times, at some things that happen in this movie. It's just you see a character here that, I mean, obviously these allegations spread, as you alluded to, but then you kind of see everything that happens after that. Uh, Maybe even hysteria that comes about from it in the town, just how things just kind of spread, and it's very, very, very interesting to watch, and certainly tough to watch at times, as I said. But Mads Mikkelsen is great in this movie. He's just phenomenal, and I laughed because I had no idea what this movie was about going into it. Like, I'm trying to do that for these
I didn't
weekly.
either.
Mhm.
I just knew that people liked it. So I bought it on Blu-ray for inexplicably. So I was like, all right, I gotta sit down and watch this eventually.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that right for these weekly movies you watch, and I had no idea. I mean, I didn't even skim it. My eyes saw it as I was going to press play, the word kindergarten teacher. That's all I really knew. And yeah, it is a kindergarten teacher. No, it was definitely not what I expected at all, just based off the title. And that's kind of the beauty of titles. You never know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
it was great. I mean, I'm floored by it, and it's a movie that I would certainly revisit, not soon, but it's a movie that I'd recommend, just on the basis that it's good filmmaking. It's incredibly engaging in a way that it really keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout it. It's not a movie that is super slow paced. Even it's pretty good paced, and it's really just one that you want to see where it goes next at every single turn, and that's what kind of keeps you going with this movie. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I love Vinterberg's directing style because you're right. He really is amazing at getting you to hang on each word that all of the actors say. So there's a few scenes in this movie where it's just people talking to each other for what, like 5 minutes, and obviously like the subject matter is pretty tough, but it's just he just locks you in to these scenes. And then there's a few moments where I would, because the cinematography in his movies aren't super stylized for the most part, at least with Another Round in The Hunt. But there's a few moments here where I don't know what it's called, but it's not a fisheye lens that he turns to, but there's a few moments where he changes to a different lens on the camera, and it like makes the surroundings of Mads Mikkelsen just look a little warped, and there's like a little bit of you get a really good sense of paranoia and hysteria just in his face, and it's really good. But yeah, it's a really tough movie, just the subject matter, but I think there's a lot of emotional truth in it as well, because there's a worse version of this movie where the Mads Mikkelsen character, they kind of play it more ambiguous, like, oh, did this actually happen or did it not? But this movie is definitively no. He's a very good person. This did not happen, but it's more about the hysteria that follows, and
Right.
yeah, I think there's definitely conversations I think people would have about, like, there's some bad takes about, like, oh, so uh, is this movie telling us not to believe survivors or of any abuse or things like that? And I don't think that's what this movie's getting at. I think it's more about showing how just tricky these situations are, and kind of how the meaning of truth can fall away when such just awful accusations are thrown at a person. Because everyone in this movie, I feel like, is acting reasonably, right? Like when teachers hear of these accusations, they try their best. They're like, okay, we're going to go to the cops. We're going to talk about this. We're going to bring someone in to interview the little girl. We're doing all the right things here. And I think all the people want to do the right thing and say, like, okay, we cannot let this happen if it's true. But you see how that slowly morphs into something much more sinister, and that's kind of where the title comes into play later on. It's just, yeah, I wouldn't call it a slow burn, but there's just so much tension in here that's within scenes there's not really much going on except people just talking. So it's just really terrific.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I just want to reference back to what you said, where Vinterberg is just really good at being able to keep you locked in. Even just, I think movies similar to this style where say you have two people chatting for 4 or 5 minutes on end, I think a lot of people would maybe tune out from time to time, but he really keeps you in on every word. And for me, even for more than usual films that kind of followed that approach, I was just locked in, wanting to see what's going to happen here. What's this character going to say to Mads Mikkelsen? How's he going to respond? Because everything, you don't really feel like you're walking on eggshells per se, but you do feel like everything now has implications. Everything now has consequences, and that's what is most engaging about this film.
Yeah, it's a lot of people trying to make sense of this really complicated issue, and this movie's also about kind of a manhunt in a sense, but it's also, and ties really well to Another Round. It's a movie about male bonding, really, because the main conflict is between Mads Mikkelsen and the kid's father, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he's great, and he was also in Another Round. Mm-hmm. But the movie is really built around their conflict and how they were best buddies for their entire lives, and now that even this accusation has been thrown at Mads's way, it's kind of about how do you really know this person, and what do these kind of words, how do they change your perception of people, regardless of whether they're true or not. And it's funny to see like this really kind of downbeat version of that, and then you see them just going out and drinking in their next movie and having a great time. There's definitely I would like to think they're kind of in the same universe, kind of like what we talked about with Run and Searching. Like they're these two guys, two best buddies who are going through their kind of middle adult lives together, you know?
And I mean, Mads Mikkelsen, I mean, he's an educator in both, right? He works within education field in both films.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he's a high school teacher in Another Round. So, there you go.
It is very cool. But yeah, so that's The Hunt. I mean, for me, that's pretty much it. It was great.
Can I talk about the ending real quick?
Oh yeah, we got to talk. Yeah.
So I don't want to spoil that here, mm-hmm. But I watched so I got this on Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray has a special feature, has an alternate ending to the movie. And I guess all I'll say is I'm really happy they went with the ending they went with in the actual movie.
Okay. Because
I would compare. Have you seen the alternate ending to Get Out?
Yeah.
Where it's the cops come and then Daniel Kaluuya's character is taken off to jail, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And I would kind of compare the ending of The Hunt to that, where it's the ending you expect to happen. That's all I'll say. Okay. But I'm really happy they did a little bit of a twist on it in the actual movie, because the ending of the actual ending is unbelievable.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to find that on YouTube. But yeah, no, you're right. The ending is something that leaves you thinking, right? It leaves you with a final statement that this movie's trying to give, right? And the ending's really good. It is. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and just this will never ever leave these characters, and especially Mads. It's just it's like a good exclamation point on a terrific movie.
Certainly, 100%. Great pick this week for sure. We'll be back next week, 100%. Probably some more Godzilla Kong rampaging through the box office. We'll see someone else's recommendation, obviously, and it's going to be great. So yeah, let's just keep getting our vaccines, and let's hopefully we keep seeing things get better. Thanks again, Nick, for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Brennan.
Certainly, and you can check out our content always on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, always, and then at themoviebabble.com. Check that out. We got some great stuff. As always, with the MovieBabble Podcast, we'll be back next week. Thank you so much.